Welcome. I am Malu Kanoa, and I'm going to share my ayahuasca experience. I took my ayahuasca trip 6 years ago, almost seven now, I think, in 2019. So if you're new here to this particular part of YouTube, the internet, my name is Malu Kanoa. I am a death midwife or a death sobonfu. Sobonfu comes from the Burkina Faso, meaning keeper of rituals. Death sobonfu, keeper of the death ritual. I help people through their grief. I help them through transition. I help families. I help those who are going through the death of anything in their life. We die from many different things in our life. So, I'm going to share my ayahuasca experience because the Great Spirit, the Great Mother, she has been telling me to do this. And I'm a little stubborn. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do this, but here we are. So I brought my bone broth and we're going to get into it. I'm going to first talk about what led up to my trip, why I went, what my reasons were for going, my early life experiences, my actual trip and journey to Peru, and then share what happens when I returned, and why I think psychedelic integration is also really important. And it's work that I like to do, and it's something that I'm going to be offering to people who are coming back. So, I went to ayahuasca because ultimately I was struggling. I was struggling in my life, checking to see if it's still working. I was struggling in my life. I was struggling with so many things, religion, Christianity, spirituality, gender, sex, um, compulsions, anxiety, depression, childhood, trauma. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in New York. I grew up in New York City. I'm originally from the Bronx. So, I grew up in a resource poor neighborhood due to the racism of the United States, due to the misogynoir, which is misogyny against Black women, Black femmes, due to patriarchy. Those intersections, I was born into that. I was born at the tail end of the crack epidemic. So I'm also born into the prison industrial complex. So when you factor in all of that, I also grew up with a godmother who was abusive. This family member was very abusive to me physically. So from the time that I'm 3 until I'm about 9, I'm being physically abused by this particular family member. And so going from 3 to 8, that's the first place where I'm being bullied by this caregiver. It's my first bully. It's the first person to show me what it means, the first person where I experience shame, right? So I'm experiencing shame. I'm experiencing physical abuse. I'm experiencing neglect. I'm experiencing mental abuse. And then I'd made the choice when I was about 8 or 9 to go back to my mother. And my mother to this day is my biggest cheerleader. She's always, it's beautiful to have a mother to call you and say, I'm proud of you. I love you. And so I was able to carry that. But growing up, again, we were still poor. We were still living in homeless shelters at times. And this is not for anyone to feel sorry for me, because this is something that could have been prevented if the United States wasn't a place that's racist. So, as a Black queer trans person, I'm going through life. I'm going through adolescence, and there's no language for what's going on inside of me in terms of my gender, in terms of my sexuality, who I'm attracted to. There are these different men who are basically just like fillers in my life. They are my mother connects with these men, but A lot of them lacked autonomy, vision, capacity, at times the rationality. There were some men who were addicted to drugs. There were some men who were abusive. There were others who just wanted a warm body, but they didn't really have the drive to do more. And I could see the disappointment in my mother's face time and time again, and I internalized that. And I think as a child, you want to make your parents happy, you know. You want to see them in good spirits. And so growing up, I experienced neglect by my earliest caregiver. I experienced neglect by the men who were in my life. I was also a queer kid, so I grew up having to fight boys, having to protect myself, because from the time I was in third grade, I was already being called, you know, the F word, you know, being called gay in ways that I didn't even understand. I didn't even understand. And so that goes on through middle school, high school, where I'm having to defend myself physically and fight other children, other boys, sometimes girls as well. I'm being bullied. But I still had friends. You know, I was still had friends, and school was the one place where I was able to sort of dive in. I was able to feel like appreciated, feel like something about me was worthy in terms of school. Like if I just do this thing, that thing is that which will garner me praise, garner me as someone worthwhile, someone worthy. And so there was just a lot of unsafe environments. The men in and out of my mother's life, some of the men that she chose. And this is not to paint my mother in a bad light. This is what this incarnation, this is what my incarnation is filled with. And so I go from high school, I have a few experiences. I do think I was in a deep depression in high school. I just was really sad. I could not express who I was. I wanted to experience dating. I wanted to experience attraction. I was attracted to people, and it's something that I couldn't speak on. I couldn't tell another guy, hey, I think you're really cute, or I think you're, you know, because at that time, especially, we had left New York, we went to North Carolina. It's the South, like it's the Bible Belt. So you can't say to a guy, like, it's not safe. Luckily, there was the online space, and so I ended up meeting my first boyfriend, well, my first two boyfriends in high school towards 12th grade. So about 12th grade, the summer right before 12th grade. And, you know, that's when there's like a break. So then I go to college. I move back to New York. I meet this guy. I'm not even going to go into it. I move back to New York. I meet this guy. I'm like trying to help him out because he's going through something. And, but I start to recognize this pattern. So I'm like 19. I'm in New York City. You know, I realize, you know what, this relationship is not working out. We're 6 months in, and I'm going to go to college. So I move upstate New York. You know, I'm with some family up there, and I spend 4 years going to college. I graduate. I decide I want to get a PhD. I go to Seattle, Washington. I go to the University of Washington, and I'm like, you know what? I really don't think that I want to get a PhD. So I tried to stay in Seattle for a little while, but no. So I go back to New York. I go to nursing school. Graduate from nursing school. I start working. I moved down to DC. DC was so much fun. But there was always, between the interaction that I'm having with men, I'm not having interactions with men who are quote unquote gay. You know, a lot of these men would be cis heterosexual if you didn't know about their lives, right? And so I'm always feeling like I'm like, but I'm not, I don't feel like I'm a guy. And so one day, so I graduate in 2015. So I graduate college in 2012, graduate nursing school in 2015. I start working in DC. So now it's 2016, 2017. I'm working. I'm in DC. I'm trying to date here and there, but nothing ever sticks. And I don't feel. So finally, I moved back to New York again. And I get a contract. I start doing travel nursing. I get a contract. I go to Connecticut. I'm working this contract. And I remember one day there's a man and he's like, he says, sir. He says, sir to me. And it just kind of like hit me like, bam. And it finally just impressed upon me that like, I don't really think that I'm like this particular gender. I don't think that I'm like a guy. Now, granted, at this point, you can call me a man, you can call me a girl, you can call me whatever you want. Don't call me late to work. If you're gonna call me if you're gonna call me a bitch, put a capital B on there. No. So at that point, it's when I really start to freak out in terms of my identity, because I'm like, I don't want to come out again. Like, I can't really do this. And so I just kind of start spiraling internally. I mean, my life is kind of going well, but like it's back into this depression, into this fog. And so I said, Spirit, I just need help. I just need some help. I don't know what is this? Why? Me being trans? Like, that's crazy. That's some crazy shit. Get the fuck up out of here. Get out of here with that. Like, no. I already came out. I'm gay. I'm not trans. Okay? I know I'm not a woman. I'm not a whatever. Okay? Slight tad bit of transphobia. But more and more that I sit with it, it's talking to me. It's like, Malu, Malu, Malu. So, basically, I was on YouTube. I don't know if I was looking up ashwagandha or ayahuasca, but somehow ayahuasca just like pops up. Just like pops up. And I'm like, oh, this must be like a herb. Like it's just a herb. So I'm like, oh, maybe I can buy some online. So I go on and it's like ashwagandha. I'm like, no, it's ayahuasca. I'm like, you could probably get it at like Whole Foods. So I go online and then I start learning. I'm like, oh, it's a psychedelic. And then I was like, huh. And then I start to learn more about it and what it can do. So what is ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is a plant. It is a combination of the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaf. And when you ask how did the indigenous know how to put that together, they said that the plants told them, and I believe them. My life has changed since ayahuasca. I can like feel the universe. I can feel the earth. And so basically the vine is boiled down with the chacruna into this sort of like brown, muddy sludge kind of, not always, but it's like this brown liquid. And so basically, I started to prepare because I started to go over people's stories on YouTube because I was afraid. I was like, oh my God, I've never done a psychedelic. I don't want to die, because Christianity, Christian secularism, Puritanism, the puritanical culture of the United States teaches you, oh, drugs are bad. Don't do drugs. Don't do LSD. Don't do, and then in the Black community, they be like, oh, that's for white people. White people do that. That's for white people. That's white people. And so I was just like curious. So I was like, I had already had a really bad trip from marijuana one time. So I was like, maybe, I don't know. So I started doing research and I really started thinking, you know what, maybe I should go. So I started listening to everybody's testimony, especially Black people. You know, no offense to the white folks, but I was like, I want to know what Black people are going through. What is their experience? And I heard so many different experiences. I heard people talk about, you know, seeing their ancestors. A lot of Black people that talked that um, they were like in contact with their ancestors. A lot of Black people just were able to heal pain, both racially, ancestrally, and then on top of like the interpersonal stuff with family. And so I felt more confident. And I watched, you know, so I watched everyone, but I particularly looked at women and Black women, as well as Black men. And so I finally make a choice. I find the place that I want to go. It's in Peru. I go, but before I go, I start to prepare. So with ayahuasca, I would recommend that if you're going to go to ayahuasca, you should prepare. You should prepare yourself. I'm very cautious about things that I do because I want to minimize harm. So harm reduction for me was to really vet the place that I was going, really vet through reviews, through talking to people, through talking to the people there. So I found the place that I wanted to go. I feel like I vetted it pretty well. I've read the reviews. I talked to people who had gone. And then I started to prepare. Something in my spirit was like, just prepare. Now, I didn't even know that this is stuff that they already recommend. But I stopped watching porn, you know, I stopped having sex. I worked on my diet. So that was 2 months leading up. So we're talking about like February, March, April, where, you know, I go vegetarian again for, well, actually, I was already vegetarian, but I cleaned it up in terms of like junk food, social media. And so I ended up starting to do floating. So floating is when you go to like one of these places where it's like a saline bath and it's really warm and it's super dark. It's just complete darkness. And you just float. And it's a way of calming the nervous system. So I really started to work on calming my nervous system. And so at the time, I'm still working as a nurse in Connecticut. I'm doing travel nursing. And so I decide to go to Peru. And so I want to say it's about May. I fly to Lima. From Lima, we fly into Cusco. From Cusco, I was picked up and driven to Urubamba. So we go to Urubamba, Peru, and I get there and it's magnificent. The compound is magnificent. There's a little river, beautiful. When I get there, I remember getting there. I remember the first day. It's just the meet and greet. It's just beautiful. It's next to the river. There's mountains. It's very Peruvian. Just, you know, the sandpaper like mountain and trees and everything's so fresh, but it's high up in the mountains. So I struggled for a few days because of the altitude sickness. So if you ever go to Peru, Cusco, the altitude. I also struggle when I'm in Mexico City because it's kind of like that. Not as high as Peru, I believe. So the first day is a meet and greet. The second day, we do temescal. And so the second day we do the temescal, and temescal is like it's like a sauna. It's like steam. It's like you're in a sauna. So they take this big wooden dome that's humongous. They put rugs over it, and then they dig a hole in the middle and put hot rocks. And so what happens is there's a little hole that you crawl into. And I remember, I didn't tell anybody that, you know, I'm dealing with this like trans issue. Hadn't told my mother, hadn't told anyone. Mind you, my mom was like, she had a dream where she was like, oh, I had a dream that you were in a dress and you were so beautiful. And I was like, This is just before I left for Peru. So now, that day we go to Temazcal, we do Temazcal, and I go in the dome. Right before I go in the dome, the curandera, which is like the healer, the shaman, but curandera or curandero. The curandera says to me, she says, "Bienvenido, hermana," meaning welcome, sister. And I was like, she doesn't, I didn't tell anybody that I'm dealing with this. I hadn't even told my best friend at the time. Okay. So we could do Temazcal. Temazcal, it's like, they try to mimic like a birthing process. It was very cathartic, very healing. I got out. So then that night we go and we sit in the, we go to the Maloka. The Maloka is the place where the ceremony takes place. The shaman set up, the facilitator set up, and everyone comes in. Because we're up in the mountains, you know, it's kind of cold at night, so we have blankets. And we are in the, we're in the Maloka. And I don't know if it was the first night or the second night, because I think I only had 3 sittings. But I want to say the first night I took the medicine, and I want to say the first or second night, one of the nights it didn't work. It only worked one night. I don't know if it was the first night or the second night. I really think it was the first night. So the first, I take the medicine. Now I'm scared of shit, y'all. Because I saw the reviews, people throwing up, people vomiting, you know, people, you know, the defecation, you know. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to take a little bit. I'm just going to take a little bit. We just going to take a little bit, you know. We just going to take a little bit. So the curandera gives me a little shot glass. Okay, what does it taste like? It's bitter. It's very bitter. It's like I thought, to me, like when I first tried it, it was like a Guinness. You know, it was like a Guinness. And so I take my shot, and I don't know if I went up there to take a shot, but I take my shot and I go sit down, or they come up to you and they give you the shot. And so I swallow my shot. I say my prayers. I'm like, Lord, please, get me through this, because I don't know. I don't want to die. Please, I don't want to die. So everybody goes back to their beds. Everything is good. The curanderas start singing the Icaros. The Icaros are kind of prayers. They sound like songs, but they are these sort of prayers. They are these sort of conversations with the Mother Ayahuasca. The curanderas and the curanderos, they are Shipibo, generally, in Peru. So, ayahuasca is a vine. What is ayahuasca? Sorry. I should probably put this in another part of the video. And so, I am sitting in the Maloka in my bed. It's night. The lights go off, and they are singing, and it's dark. It's just dark. And the curanderos, they're singing. They're what sounds like singing, but they're doing the Icaros. And so as they're doing the Icaros, as they're singing the Icaros, time starts to pass. 1 hour, 2 hours. And about 2 hours, or just before 2 hours, like, people start to have experiences. So you can hear people are having their experiences. Some people are starting to vomit. Some people are laughing. Some people are crying. And I don't feel anything. And so I start to get kind of upset. And so I keep going. It's about 3 hours now, and I'm like, I don't feel nothing. And I'm kind of upset because, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think it was the second night. So the first night, I don't think I had any experience. So now on the second night, I finally have an experience. But right before that, I'm like talking to the mother, because I'm like, you know what? I'm not scared. No, I'm not scared anymore. I'm not scared anymore. Like I said, mother, great mother, I said, mother ayahuasca, if you're about to show me whatever you're about to show me, then you need to show me it. Show me it. Show me it. Since you're about to show me, I've spent all this money to get here. I've spent all of this money to get here. Now I start crying. And at the time, I wasn't a big crier. I was not a big crier. Post hormones now, I be crying. I'm a crybaby. And so I just start crying, and I'm like, fuck this, and I'm cussing, and I'm, in my head, of course, I'm not out loud. I was just like, you know what, mother, great mother, my mother ayahuasca, if you want to show me something, then let's go. Let's go. That warrior in me, that New York in me, I'm like, we finna do this. We do it. What's good? Like, like it just takes me back to my days growing up in New York. So, the medicine all of a sudden starts to work. The medicine starts to work. And the first thing I feel, I think, is this sensation of a snake kind of curling around my body. And it wasn't like a dangerous, like, oh my God, like it's a snake, I'm gonna die. It was like the most loving embrace. It was like this loving embrace, like wrapping around me. And all of a sudden I hear, like in my mind, it was like I felt hearing. Like I feel things, I don't hear them, but I feel them. And then since that feeling speaks to me. And it was like this most loving voice that has ever come over me in my life. And it is a love that there are no human words for it. It was like the first time in my life that I was like, oh my God. And I was just sitting there, and it was just the first time in my life, like, and of course my mother has told me so many times that she's loved me and she's hugged me. This is a love. This is a love that there's just no words for it. There are no words for it. It is a love beyond the ancestral realm. It is a love it is only a God could have that kind of love. I said I wasn't gonna cry. It's the most beautiful. That kind of love creates earths. That kind of love creates universes. That kind of love is, you can do no wrong. It is a love that is beyond human comprehension. And so I remember that it was just the voice, the mother, she was telling me, she said, like, look at you. You're so beautiful. She said, like, she said, look at you. You're so beautiful. Look at you, my child. Like, I just remember the voice being so loving, and she was like, I'm here for you. I got you. She's like, don't be afraid. I had spent so much of my life in fear. Growing up around boys that were abusive, men and boys in my neighborhood, in my school, bullying me, abusing me, women bullying me, kids putting their hands on me, you know, adults watching me be abused and not correcting the children that were doing the abusing. Growing up with men that abandoned my mother, a mother who unfortunately, you know, she didn't choose the best men. You know, I never felt safe, and it was the first time that I felt safe, that I felt loved. Sometimes I was like, is this what white people feel like? I'm pretty sure it's not. But and that's like no shade. But and so it was the first time that I still remember the feeling. And she told me as I looked outside, she was like, "You see that mountain? That mountain loves you, and you love the mountains. You love those trees. Those trees, they love you. These stars." It just felt like the whole universe was in love with me in this very motherly way. And I just remember, I think the facilitator came up to me and she was like, "Oh, is everything all right?" And I looked at her and I was like, "I feel it. I'm in it." And then she smiled back. I think she was actually from, I think she was from New York too. She was one of the volunteer facilitators. And so the last two nights, I didn't the final night I didn't have any more experiences. In that night, in that experience, I saw some things that I'm seeing now in our world. I saw the protests and the fires, and there's some stuff I'm not going to share because I think that that's for me and mother, between me and mother ayahuasca and the universe. And so after that night, but during that night, she showed me some protests, but she kept showing me me getting up and walking away from everything, just walking down a road. And I've seen this in subsequent ayahuasca journeys. So then the next day we do our integration circle, and then we have our 5-MeO-DMT. If you don't know what 5-MeO-DMT is, 5-MeO-DMT is DMT, but it's a different chemical structure, and it comes from the frog. It comes from their glands. I'm not quite sure if it's a poison, but it comes from their glands, and you dry it into a crystal kind of, and you inhale it, you smoke it. And so that day, we all went one by one for our journey. So I go for my journey, and I go back into the Maloka. It's daytime now. We go into the Maloka. We've already had breakfast maybe 4 hours before. And we do the 5-DMT. And 5-MeO-DMT is not my favorite, but that first experience was great because it's very light. It wasn't too heavy. And it takes you to ground zero. You know, it takes you to ground zero. And so I don't really work with that medicine anymore. But when I did my 5-MeO, I felt like I was healing my ancestors. I felt, you know, it was between the 5-MeO-DMT and the ayahuasca, I was able to reconcile why my father had abandoned me. And it's because he was abandoned. He was abandoned. He was abandoned by his father. His father wasn't around, so he couldn't be around for me. And so I was able to move beyond that hurt. And even though it's still there, it doesn't control my life anymore. And so I leave, I go on a trip to Europe for about 3 months. I come back, and I think I was doing another contract, still in Connecticut, and I decided to go back to Peru. So I go back to Peru, and I go to the jungle this time. And the jungle, the medicine was a lot more intense. So where I was up near Cusco was like the mountains. While I was up there, I did peyote. So mind you, this is all my first experience with psychedelics. So I end up doing peyote. That is a very grandfather medicine. It's not, in my opinion, it wasn't as intense as Mother Ayahuasca. It's very fatherly, very grandfatherly, very, very gentle, very subtle at times. And so I go and I do my journey. I'm just like thinking about the guy who, the shaman, the curandero who was doing my journey. And I was like, that was the one moment where I was not too sure about, because this was a different person, but this was a different retreat center. This wasn't the retreat center that I went to, but this was like a different, and it was just a day ceremony. But I was like thinking about him just now, and I'm like, I feel like he was like trying to like make moves, like trying to get my number, and I was just like, I'm in the middle of peyote. What are you doing? So you got to be careful. You have to be really mindful. Now, you're not going to be, it's not foolproof, of course. So anyway, I go to Europe, I come back, I go back to Peru, I go to someplace around Nauta. So it's Nauta, Peru, and the only way to get to this particular place is that you have to go on a boat. There are no roads. And the boat ride is about, I want to say it's about an hour and a half. So I go, we have about, I think it's another 3 nights of ceremony. And that trip was the hardest. And I think that this is what brings me into the death doula work. And so, during those trips, so now it's September, so we're around the equinox. The autumn equinox has happened. I'm an equinox baby. So the equinox is happening September 23rd. I'm here in Peru, and then I had about 3 trips. The first night I resisted the medicine. It was difficult. You can imagine this beautiful, I'll put a picture up, but so the first night I'm resisting the medicine. It's just, I feel like it's trying to pull me into something, and I'm just like resisting it. I'm just like resisting. I'm like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I just felt like so scared, I guess. And so then the second night, we go back. We're doing it. This night, I'm not feeling anything. I'm like, oh God, here we go again. Like, I hate this. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. So we go through the whole night, mind you, the whole night. And I don't feel anything. So now ceremony is over. We start at 7. Ceremony is over by like 2, 3. Ceremony is over. And so I'm like disappointed, but then it hits. By then, most people had left the Maloka. I said, oh God, I'm going to be here by myself. You know, I start to panic a little bit because I'm like, oh my God, I can't go through this by myself. And Mother Ayahuasca says, I got you. I got you. And she says that, and I knew that I was safe. I knew that it was okay. And I was like, I'm going to be by myself. And so what ends up happening is I start to light my Palo Santo, which I need to do that now. So I light my Palo Santo, you know, and I also made a playlist, which is funny. I have made a playlist to listen to. And so I put my playlist on and I go through my journey. And again, I'm having that really loving journey. Having that really, really just loving journey that I had back in May. And she's just letting me know, I love you. She's showing me archetypes of like a warrior woman, you know, just this possible past life where I was a warrior. And she's just showing me all this beauty within me. She kept telling me, you hold your head up high. She kept telling me, you hold your head up high. You know, live your life. You know, guard your energy. She kept showing me, you know, that I needed to guard my energy. She kept showing me in a cloak as a way of telling me to kind of cloak myself. And she showed me some other things. And she would always look at me and say, but do you really want to know? Like, she would show me a door. And I kept looking at that door and I was like, I don't know if I want you to open that door. And so I go through this experience that night. I'm by myself. But then my ancestors are with me. These like 4 mothers came and they were like each at my side, at my leg, at my feet, at my head, and at the sides of me. And I could just feel them putting whatever work into me, blessing me. And so then the night ends. Go back to my room. I leave the Maloka. I go back to my room. I go to sleep. And then we have the next day. So the next day, I think, so now we have our next nightly ceremony. And that's the night, the last 2 nights were the roughest for me. So the second night of the 3 ceremonies, that's when it starts to get hard. That's when it starts to get rough. Yeah. And so that night, it's rough. But it was worth it. Now, it's night. The people, the shamans or the curanderos, they are singing. People are screaming bloody murder. Okay? People are screaming blood-curdling screams like somebody is murdering them. It is kind of scary. And so I remember my journey began with a sort of paranoia that there were spiders. I had this paranoia that I got bit by spiders and I was gonna die and I needed the anti-venom. Yes. And so I had to go to the bathroom a lot. Not a lot, but a few times I had to like get up and run. Ayahuasca is either gonna come up from here or it's gonna come out the bottom. So for me, it was coming out the bottom. And so I remember just being like, everybody's high. Everybody's like out of their minds. We're all out of our minds. And I just remember like just going through and seeing the world. And she was talking to me about all of this catastrophe. And I'm not going to go too deep into detail because I think that's things that I want There are some things that I was given that I don't want to talk about, that I don't think, that'll always stay between me and the universe. And so I remember going to the bathroom thinking that I got bit by spiders. And I don't know, I ended up wanting to go next to one of the facilitators, because she always felt like a mother to me. She was always so kind. I can't remember her name, but she was always so kind. And so I went and I started having my experience. I left my bed and went over towards her bed, and I laid next to her. And because I just needed to feel safe, right? And I put my music on. I lit my Palo Santo, still thinking that the spiders were biting me. And I remember both nights were pretty similar. Everyone's screaming out of their mind. I wasn't screaming, but there were blood-curdling screams, people losing their shit. And so I remember just dying. I mean, just dying and just feeling like, oh my God, I'm dying. 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 And then I would surrender. And I would just surrender to the death. And every time that I would surrender, both nights, this white bird would fly up over me. There was this white bird, and she would tell me, when you die, it's not as bad as you think it is. I don't think death is as bad as we truly think it is. Being on ayahuasca is like, the Avatar, when they connect their hairs or whatever and they lock into each other. It's something like that. I don't know how to explain it. There's no human words for it. And so I would go through these loops of death and dying, death and dying, death and dying. And I would just death and dying, death and dying, death and dying. And I mean, it was just loops and loops. But I would surrender each time. Every time I would let go of the fear of death. It was like I would lock into the universe. Like, I did want at one point tell her, "Oh, show me your power." I'll never ask that question again. That was scary. It was intense when I was like, "Show me your power," and she just took me through all of these things, and I'm like, "Oh, this is too much for a human brain to understand." And she was like, "Right. Enjoy your humanness. Stop striving to be like a god." That's the problem that humans get caught up in, is that they're trying to be God. You can't be God. It would break your brain, is how I interpreted it. And so, but I remember dying. I remember just dying. I remember feeling like I was in a grave and there was dirt on me. I remember just different types of death, like a horrible death, an angry death, a painful death, a regretful death. All of these things where I couldn't tell my mother that I loved her. I couldn't apologize to my sister. I couldn't, try to make amends with my father. I had all these deaths. But every time I would fight it, every time I would stop fighting it, this bird would come. And I won't say it was a dove, but it was just this bird of light would come over me. And then there was a time where during either that night or the second night or the last night, I think the last night, these like ancient beings came to me and they were like working on me. Now I know some of you are like, "Oh my God, you got abducted." I don't feel like that's something, that's not what happened. Because I know that some people have talked about abduction or aliens on ayahuasca. That's not what happened with me. To me, it felt like it was ancestors, but it also felt like these really benevolent spirits that came, and they were working on me. And I was like, what are you doing? And they were like, we're giving you stuff. We're putting stuff in you. And I was like, well, what is it? And they were like, you're only going to know over the course of your life. So I kind of understand what it is, but I don't really know. And so, but whatever they did, I guess it's working. And so I just remember dying and dying and dying and dying so many times. Oh, it was awful at times. It was so awful. It was so scary. And then I would surrender, and it would be the most beautiful death of just pure peace and love, and just saying, you know what, like, I'm okay. Like, it's okay. My life was good. I had a good life. I did a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I stayed true to myself. And so the last night, I remember we all ended up, we left the Maloka and we went to the Haloka. So the Haloka is like the community space, and it was like a bunch of kids in a slumber party. We all just like went up to the Maloka, and we went up to the Haloka, I believe it's called. And we all just like crashed up there like that night after our experiences. Like, it was just like, it's like waking up. It's just like feeling like you're reborn. Like, you feel like, and this is a bad analogy, please don't cancel me, but whatever that means. You feel like you've been through like the Holocaust. Okay, you feel like you've been through, the Jenny that's happening to Palestinians. Like, you feel like you've been through war and you came out. You've been through the dark forest. You feel like you've been Frodo going through the exhaustion. Lord of the Rings, part of the point of Lord of the Rings is the exhaustion of the journey. Like, you experience the exhaustion that Frodo experiences. And then you come out. And so it was just like, it was the most beautiful night. You could see fireflies. And we were all just up there like little kids in the Haloka. And it was just, it's one of the most memorable moments of my life. I will say that. And so, yeah, so wow, yeah. And so I come back and I'm like, you know what? It's time to start hormones. It is time to start hormones. And so that kicked off my transition. I decided to leave New York, move to California. I come to California, this is right before the pandemic. And then for the first time I try psilocybin. Psilocybin tells me to quit my job. I quit my job and I end up in Mount Shasta, leave Mount Shasta. By January, I'm in Mexico. Pandemic breaks out. But right before that, I had more ayahuasca experiences. I had like 2 more sittings. They weren't the exact ayahuasca medicine, but they were very, I wouldn't say they were very similar. But this one was, one of them I drank, and the other one, the second sitting was like a pill and a drink. Those ones were very powerful. They weren't as scary, but I do remember being in the medicine And so these ayahuasca like medicines, because one was like the ayahuasca vine, and then it was not the chacruna, but it was some other similar to the chacruna to activate the DMT. Because the ayahuasca acts as like a DMT block. It blocks the enzyme that breaks down DMT, or so it's like a DMT inhibitor. It's a DMT enzyme inhibitor. So whatever enzyme breaks down DMT, ayahuasca inhibits that, and then the chacruna or the DMT is added, so you have this experience. And each time in those 2 sittings in California, I remember going to like the ground of being, the it's like the prima materia, like in Gnostic text. It was like going through your evolution, and everything would all got kind of slimy, like kind of like lizardy. And then I would go through. It was always like a going down into. Now, mind you, this is when I started throwing up. These particular ceremonies, these 2, I threw up. In total, I've only had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've had like 8 ceremonies with ayahuasca. I know that there are people who use it more. I don't know if that's beneficial. I'm not going to tell people what to do. This is just what I did. And so I remember with those 2 journeys in California, like things would get kind of slimy before they got better. It was almost like I was going back into the ground of being, going back into our evolution when maybe we were like in the water. And so I remember each time in those journeys, it was very vivid that I was walking away. I was walking away from everything. I was always walking away, but like not in a way of like being just like purely happy. Like just this joy of just like walking down this path. Almost like a Jesus figure, but it was like me. Or it was a part of me that was, so yeah. Coming back from ayahuasca, it helped me. It helped me to know the God that's within my body. Not the God of the Bible, not the God that's in the mind that you learn about, but God in your body. And God in your body is a knowingness, is a humbleness. And I think someone said to be humble, being humble is like you knowing that you deserve to be here. And it was the first time that I felt worthiness, that I felt I'm worthy of being here on this planet. I'm worthy of my life. I'm worthy of living the life that I desire. I'm loved. I'm kept. Someone and something is watching over me, watching out for me, guiding me, protecting me. And so it was the first time where I could really hold my head up. To this day where I hold my head up and I'm less fearful of things. I still struggle with anxiety. It's not a fix. Ayahuasca, psychedelics are not a fix. They give you tools, and you have to decide what you're going to do with the tools. You have to decide every day, am I going to step into what ayahuasca gave me? Am I going to bring the presence? Am I going to shut down? Because ayahuasca, it's like our system reboot. Am I going to spend time rebooting my system? Breath work. Am I going to do breath work? Am I going to, journaling? So coming back from ayahuasca, it's hard. Because you're coming back into a world where everyone is caught up in their compulsions. Everyone's caught up in their pathologies. They're caught up in their trauma. Whose fault is it? Who did this to me? Somebody did that to me. They did this to me. well, I got to do that because if I don't do that, then I'm a failure. And I got to stay in this relationship because, you know, if I don't, I'm not a good wife, or I'm not a good husband, or I'm not a good father. I got to do this. I got to do that. And you realize that you're the villain in your story. You're the villain in your story, or you're the hero. You know, you're the hero and you're the villain. You know, the villain exists to show you where you need to let go, or move on, or change, or apologize. Your inner villain shows you where you could be a better person, you know? And so coming back into the world after ayahuasca is difficult. It's difficult because you've been through something. And that's the heroine's journey. That's the hero's journey. You know, you go through your journey. You leave home like Frodo. I left home. You leave home like Harry Potter. But yet you have to return home. Harry Potter returns to that house. Although that's another situation. Frodo returns to his village. And you're changed. And so the thing is that you have a choice now. Young Padawan. You have a choice. You can either take those tools and you can use that to make your life better, or you can keep chasing ayahuasca, keep chasing the experience. And some people do that. I would love to sit with the medicine again, but I just haven't found the time or really the calling. And more so, I'm waiting on the calling. You know, ayahuasca shows you options. It doesn't choose for you. When you come home, now is where you have to journal, meditation, somatic work, yoga, going into nature, you know, because it's like, you feel like, sometimes you start to feel like, oh, I'm losing it. But you've also entered like a long, less dramatic phase where the experience of ayahuasca is now yours to experience every day. You know, because as Carl Jung would say, that like when you come back, your ego is trying to reassert itself. You know, you've gone through this transcendent experience. It humbles your ego temporarily, but your ego, when you return, wants to restore control in the narrative. And that's the thing. Ayahuasca breaks the narrative for a little while. It breaks the narrative that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not beautiful enough, you don't have enough money. And it places you in the heart. It opens their heart. It resets all of those. It resets you. You know, so coming back from ayahuasca is really the real work. Coming back from ayahuasca is really the real work. And for me, it was life-changing. For me, it removed a lot of fear in my life. Just living in perpetual fear all the time. Like, just you're down here, you're in this meat suit, and you're just living in fear. What if I don't have enough money? What if I don't this? What if I don't that? What if I don't? And it taught me to trust. It also taught me that, like, the universe is kind of magical. Like, she's a little magical. You know, like, it really changed my concept of what God is, what I've been taught by Christianity, what I've been taught by the church. Really changed that. Really changed that. It really changed that for me. And I'm forever grateful. It I don't know who I would be. I don't know who I would be, where I would be, and I would do it all over again. Since ayahuasca, my fucking life has been an adventure. It has been an adventure, and all the adventure hasn't been fun, but in the grand scheme of it, thank you for listening. I hope you guys go to ayahuasca and be safe. Ask the mother for what you need, not what you want, what you need. And if you are in need of post-integration work and help, reach out. I'll put my email, and you can sit in a container and